Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
Good morning, everyone. It is Tuesday, May 28th, 2024. My name is John Piranunzi, and this is the opening swing. Let's begin today, as we always do, with our news. Out of Europe, not too much, no top tier numbers, a few speakers. We had Schnabel, we also had Mester that already spoke. A few other central bank speakers that aren't on this calendar. I believe we have not coming in, but no top tier numbers out of Europe. Europe is slightly up. Coming into the U.S. hours, we have some home price indexes at 9, followed by Kashkari. 10 a.m. we have consumer confidence, which is our biggest news driver, then a few bill auctions, regional Fed survey at 10:30, followed by a few more bill announcements and some auctions. Two-year note at 11:30, 5-year at 1. Then shortly after, we have Cook speaking again. So a bit lighter calendar today. Let's take a quick look at our weekly chart. And here we are. What I've been emphasizing on this chart is how bullish the weekly chart has been. We continue to one time frame higher. That's still in effect. However, what we need to notice is that this candle is the first week that closed lower than it began in the last 5. And we're definitely kind of getting hitting some resistance as we try to push and hold above the prior all-time high. Even though we're able to make a new high, we're still kind of starting to grind a little bit. The high and low of this prior week will be important to me. I'll be, whether we're able, which extreme we're able to test, if either, and are we able to extend or do we revert? So the weekly range will be pretty important to me this week. Let's move on to discuss the daily chart, which is right here. So the things to be aware of for me on the daily chart, we have this green area, the 575s, the 49s, which was an important range that I talked about last week a lot. And then on the 23rd here, we had the test above, gave us a new all-time high, and then failure lower. And we're within the range of this day still, so that's important to me. We've also clawed back up into this 0575 to 49 region. For me, the way that I'm looking at this, we got the test, we rejected lower, now we're clawing back in. I'm expecting attempts to the 49s or towards the 49s to find resistance initially. That's what I'm expecting here. I'm looking at this as a test, rejection, and I am expecting continued resistance on any pushes up towards the 49 area, which we'll go over that on a lower time frame chart. But I just want to emphasize that doesn't mean that we won't push through and get this high. It just means that I'm expecting there to be resistance, because the last time we were there, we saw resistance. I don't have a reason to believe that those sellers are yet satisfied. So that's what I am expecting today. Let's move on to a smaller time frame chart. Okay, here we are on our 4x5 PNF chart, which we can kind of see the this 49 area that I mentioned in blue, and this 0575 area, which I mentioned is an important range, and we have the high and the low of the 23rd. And as you can see, since we made that low on the 23rd, we're just kind of grinding higher. I had this area right here from 34 to 45, which I was expecting resistance, which holds our prior week's VPOC. I'm still expecting resistance in this area, and if we should push up through it to the 49s, I'm still expecting resistance up there. That idea becomes completely invalidated on a push and hold above the 49s, 50s, in which case my expectation would, I'd start to expect that we could move to test the prior week's high. But as of right now, this area, basically from 34 to 45, and then above 47 to 52, I'm expecting resistance. Now, we are also to notice here, we have an open settlement today so far. So that's to be aware of. And we have pushed above the high of Friday so far with our low down here. So basically, we're just back within that range of 0575 to 49s. And we expect resistance up here, and there's an expectation of support down here. However, I would say that excursion below the 04s for me seems a little bit more vulnerable. Could easily be wrong. Let's move on to an 8 box and plan for some specific price action. Okay, here we are on our 2x4 or 8 box PNF chart. What areas are important today? Well, first, as I mentioned, we have settlement, which is open below our overnight low. So the settlement overnight low region, this like 22 area, is very important. And below that, I have these 16 region, this kind of like sloppy area from 09s to about 16s, and then the 0575s, which are important to me. Below that, we have yesterday's low. Then going down, we have the prior week's low down here. These 85s were also, this is our former gap zone that we filled in from this region. Close that gap, and then above we have our overnight high. Also aware of this LVN right at 33.5. Prior week's VPOC, which is in the most important area up in this 34 to 45 area. Then we have this key upper bounds of this balance area. And then the prior week's high, which is very important. And then our 75s, which is an area that I mentioned prior to this. So let's begin by taking a look. Because we have an open settlement, I'll look at the bullish ideas first. And the most bullish idea obviously would be if settlement holds open. If settlement holds open, I would expect us to move up and try to retest this LVN. And on a retest of the LVN, I'll just note there's obviously two possibilities. The bullish possibility would be continuation higher, takes the overnight high. I would expect us to begin to sort of continue to hold this sort of sloppy uptrend, takes the overnight high, moves up, prior week's VPOC, takes these prices, and may go up to the 49s. However, in this action, I have to say, again, this would be super vulnerable, to breaking lower to take this settlement. So any push higher, as long as we're holding the prior low, it's all, it's bullish, but if we would always be vulnerable to a push lower that fails through that prior low, can't get the prior high, and then goes down to take settlement. So we're aware of that if this kind of music changes, but if it does not and we hold settlement open, I would be open to excursion higher through these prices. Again, if we test into this 49 area, this would be an area that, in my opinion, would be vulnerable to a deep pullback and potentially reversal that can't get the prior high and then moves down and begins to take these targets below. But let me get rid of some of this. Sorry, there's some noise outside. It's kind of messing with my concentration. But anyway, so the most bullish scenario would be holding this settlement open, grinding higher to this LVN, taking the overnight high, and then potentially moving on to take these targets above prior week's VPOC, this area, and potentially higher up. But we know that we would be vulnerable to a deep pullback in any of these situations. Also, another potential bullish idea, we could easily get a test higher that does not get the overnight high, falls lower, tests into settlement, but kind of like does not get any further and then gives us another impulse higher. They then can continue those targets. So we're aware that this bullish action to take out these targets, it could happen with holding this settlement open, or it could happen with a test lower that continues higher. Those are the key bullish ideas for me. What happens if we get excursion below settlement or a deeper test? Let's take a look at those ideas. So, like I said, we are looking at the 16s. This area is a key target or a key reference for me below. So as I said, with any of those initial scenarios, we could see a test higher to the LVN that then falls lower, or we could just sort of like not even really get that high and just fall down to this area. But the key for me would be testing the 16s and then the treatment of settlement on a retest, if we get a retest or not. If we get a retest of settlement and we get above, then like I said, it could easily flip into any one of those bullish scenarios. And really settlement for me is kind of like the bullish LIS. You know, if we're above settlement, then I'm expecting us to potentially make progress towards targets higher. However, if we are below settlement, then I would expect us to make progress lower. Below the 16s, the next key area that we're looking for is these 0575s, which are very important. That would be the key target here for me lower. Again, at the 0575s, we could test, we could hold above, or we could test slightly below. But either way, there is potential there for reversion higher that make it bullish. But again, for me, it wouldn't be especially bullish until we're able to get back above the settlement region. Staying below settlement, it remains bearish for me. If we're able to get below the 575s, the Friday low is the next key target. Again, and again, I'll mention if we get kind of a rounded bottom ahead of the Friday low, it again could be a place where we get the impulse higher. Although testing Friday's low, I would kind of if we test into Friday's low, even if we impulse higher, I would start to think that it may just be bounce and chop. I don't know if we'd get all the way back up here and see a lot of continuation. Below Friday's, oops, below Friday's low, as I've said, we're looking at the 85s. Wrong color. We're looking at the 85s. Again, I would expect support or the prior week's low. I would be surprised to see us test the prior week's low today, although I would be happy to see it because it would probably be a pretty good trade. For us to get that far today, I think we'd have to see a pretty nice impulse off the open that shows us that settlement just isn't happening, that it just isn't any kind of support, like a pretty solid impulse, maybe an attempt to get back off of the 05s, but doesn't get prior settle, and then another continuation that falls. We'd have to see. I think we'd have to see some pretty aggressive movement to get down below the 85s and attack the prior week's low today. However, it could be possible, and if it happens, it would be a good trade. Now, as I've kind of mentioned, one thing to be aware of here, like a lot of my plans are like looking to the next test and then saying, oh, we could go up, we could go down. That's happening because we're within this area that is balanced, which is between these 0575s and the 49s. So really, it's very ambiguous for me as to what happens in here. I'm just going by these smaller landmarks and these smaller tests that may give us a reaction. But really, within this area, I have to say, it's pretty ambiguous. It's pretty ambiguous. It could be a pretty difficult trade. If we cleanly break below the 05s, it gets a little easier. How we can be a little bit more bearish. However, we know that there are buyers waiting down here, so it's still not super easy. Similarly, above these 49s, it starts to get more bullish, but we could easily have a test and revert. So that's why the plans today and recently have been kind of emphasizing that with each test we could see reversion, because we're in a very balanced area. So we have to be aware of that. We're not out of balance and cleanly in price discovery. We're in an area that was accepted. So we have to be aware of that. We have to be, for me, it means I don't hold runners so much in this environment. Like if I get the move I'm expecting, that's my trade, and I don't overstay them. That would change, like I said, if we had a significant break from either of these areas. But that's what I'm seeing today. I'm going to wrap it up because, again, we're long. Today, my expectation for opportunity is a little more tempered. I'm thinking today could be a little bit ambiguous, as I've said, based on where we are. However, could easily change with a nice break in either direction, which would be good news. Good news to be wrong. Sometimes it is. But that's what I'm saying for today. I hope that this was complete for you guys. I hope that it helped you guys in some way or another. And again, this is just kind of my plans that I do every day, and hopefully it provides utility to you. I'm going to cut it off here. I hope everyone has a great morning in progress, and I hope that will continue and you're able to improve your trading in some way today. And as always, I hope you can make somebody else smile, because that's the real key to a successful day. I'll see everyone tomorrow. Have a good one. Bye-bye.